Christ is my firm foundation.
Hello, and welcome to Empowered Voices, where we cultivate inner strength, gentleness, and holistic well being through self control and our faith. Hi, I'm Tandrika, and today with me I have Victoria and Twanda. And if you were here with us earlier, we talked about gentleness as power. And now we want to transition this conversation just a little bit to talking about faith as foundation for flourishing. And it seems as if faith for foundation is not as popular as we would expect it to be in today's world. But I have to tell you that without my faith, I don't know if I would even be sitting here right now.
Mhm.
Fear tends to rise up in us when we are doing something that is unknown and recognizing that we have to stand firm on our faith as a foundation to get past being uncomfortable, recognizing that in those uncomfortable moments, just right around the corner
Mhm.
is that curve that puts you in the position of where you want to be and where you're trying to go.
Mm.
Sometimes that fear that will come over the faith will have us to stop right before we see what we've been hoping for the whole time.
Mm.
And I'd like to ask today, have you ever had that moment?
Mhm.
Have you ever been in that transition? I can tell you that I've been in that moment several times in my life.
Mhm.
And each time I've been there, I noticed that when I let go of that fear and rise and just truly believe in my faith and
Mhm.
what I was doing, that everything worked out.
Yeah. Yeah.
Everything worked out and everything came together.
Mhm.
And that uncomfortable feeling when you're transitioning, it was then released
Mm.
and removed.
Yeah. Um, it I like the way that you started this conversation. We're talking about faith as foundation for flourishing. Now, I can attest and I can, you know, say and testify that
Mm.
I was raised to be a person to I wouldn't say have control.
Mm.
All right, let's just be honest. I was a person that needed to understand
Mhm.
before diving into anything.
Mhm.
If the waters looked funny, we weren't going in there. I
Mhm.
used my senses as my calculator as to whether or not I felt safe. And that's normal, right? Like
Mhm.
I was living the humanistic experience. I knew of faith. I knew of names in the Bible. Couldn't tell you a story. Could not tell you who did what, why they did it. Would not be able to read a verse to you.
Mhm.
I am thankful to say today that I am no longer in that space.
Yeah.
I could actually read it for myself. I can understand it, and not only can I read and understand it, but I can be overcome with a sense of peace
Mhm.
behind it. And I want to take us to a quote that I kind of reread often. It says, "Faith and fear demands that you have to believe. and one versus the other, right? And so where are you going, where are you landed? It's almost like when we were just talking about gentleness is power. Where are you standing in that moment, right? Are you standing on the face of faith? Are you standing on the face of fear? And I can honestly say, looking back, outside in, I was on the brink of fear. And let me tell you about the root of fear, because fear is a root. A lot of people talk about fear as just this isolated word, and it isn't. Fear turns into worry, fear turns into panic, fear turns into anxiety, fear turns into anger. Fear turns into loss of control, loss of appetite. Like it has a specific effect on the humanistic experience. Fear has so many elements to it. And I think we look at this word fear and just say, oh, it's just me being scared. Oh no, honey, it can spiral into you thinking and believing, not only thinking but believing a certain way, working a certain with certain people, only going to certain places, not leaving your house, isolating yourself. So it's so depression, fear, anxiety, fear, any kind of mental condition, we can literally link it to fear.
That's it. That's it. And so I know that, especially in our community, in our cultural community,
Right.
with with our males, a lot of times, they're viewed as angry, right? And even sometimes us women, we're viewed as angry.
Bitter.
I
They
think
like to say we're bitter.
bitter.
Yeah, yeah.
And just being quite transparent, sometimes that comes from having fear of the unknown,
Right.
having fear of not realizing what the next pattern is, what the next step is, because a lot of times that when we're doing something, we don't have the blueprint.
Right. Right.
We are the trailblazer in that moment of what that looks like. We never had someone to show us. And so that fear turns out of looking like aggression when it's truly us trying to understand.
Right. Right. Holding on to something.
And
Grasping
so
something.
I know that, we've all had experiences in this, in this, and recognizing, how do we actually relegate our faith over fear?
Yeah.
How do we do that?
Yeah.
How do we get out of those boxes that sometimes hold us in specific areas of our life? How do we? And I want to ask Twanda if there's been a time when you've had to really hold true to your faith as foundation to help you through a situation.
I hold on to my faith on an everyday basis, honestly. I'll be honest. Because there's some things and situations that's going on in my surroundings. And because of when I went to school, I'll go back. When I went to school, I went to back to school to be a medical assistant. And when I went back to school to be a medical assistant, I was over 40 years old. And I was like, boy, I'm the oldest thing in the school building.
Yeah.
I don't think this is scary. I don't think I want to do this. Well, come to find out, I wasn't the oldest thing in the school building. It was somebody 20 years older than me, but that scared me. I was not ready for that. And then I had to prepare myself to actually go do what, I know that it's in my family, medical. So I went and did it, not because of my family. I went and did it because that was something I wanted to do. And when I went and did it, it made me feel good about myself. It made me flourish And it made me have the faith that to know that I can do anything I put my mind to.
Right.
It wasn't false evidence appearing real. It wasn't fear anymore.
Wow. Yeah.
It became the faith thing and I knew that I wasn't going to collapse. I wasn't going to let myself think that, oh, I can't do this.
Right.
And in the process of all that, going to school, I got on the dean's list. So that made me really feel great.
Yeah. That's real. That's real good.
And what do how do we help somebody who is going through this right now, having to recognize that, faith as a foundation and not giving up? It's very hard not to give up when you are exemplifying your faith day in and day out,
Right.
and you're still not seeing the results that you want to receive,
Right.
or that you expect to see.
Right.
So how do you push through that type of that time period with this faith that is unwavering?
Right.
In the Bible, it does tell us, faith as a grain of a mustard seed, right? How do we continue to have that faith as a grain of a mustard seed that can grow to the foundation that we know that, what, it's going to come to pass?
Yeah.
How? How do you get through those times? This is for someone who is listening right now, who is saying, I've had faith, and I'm still 10 years down the road,
Right. Wow,
hoping for something that I saw 10 years ago, and I'm still being persistent, and I'm ready to give up.
Right.
I'm ready to give up.
I kind of want to speak a little bit about my experience and my faith and how that grew, because like I said, I came from a family that it's not that they lacked faith. If anything, my mom had a better relationship than religion, because she prayed every day, but she couldn't articulate. That was the thing. Again, I am a person that needs an understanding of things, right? So if you can't articulate it to me, I'm gonna miss it. You're gonna lose me, and I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know why I'm doing it, right? And so it's that why that a lot for me, that's what really needed to happen. And so I remember 10 years ago, it's literally 10 years ago. You say 10 years, and I'm laughing because I'm trying to conjure the story in my mind as I remember it. And it was 10 years ago, and I went into your room. You guys were going to church at the time, and you started talking in tongues. I left the room. I came back. I said, no. Whatever that was, I'm okay. You can count me out. I don't understand it. It is foreign. It's uncomfortable. So I remember just being in the room and still feeling uncomfortable. But what I will say is that get in the room, right? And what that means to me is saying to someone out there, find something, someone, or even a body of people that you can really hold on to while you're trying to navigate your identity in Christ. Because the thing about having faith, we could say, like you said, we could say we have faith and I've been trucking along for 10 years, but what does your identity look like? And at that moment, it was faith, right? Because things weren't tangible. We were living with you at the time. I didn't even have my own place. I had kids. I was just like, oh no, I'm being honest. You know what I'm saying? It was very uncertain. Right. And so I'm like, what do I do? And don't get me wrong, 10 years ago, I didn't pick up the Bible and just start reading it and things like that. No, I didn't do that. It wasn't up until a couple of years ago that I really started to take it serious and understand it for myself and get the revelation that I needed as I tried to dissect what my identity was in Christ. And it took me, and I want to say this right. I believe it's in Romans, or it could be in, look, I think it's in Romans. But when Christ says, no, it wasn't in Romans, it was actually in one of the Gospels. But when Christ says to us, where I'm weak, well, sorry, yeah, where you are weak, I am strong. Where you are weak, I am strong. That is, remember we were just talking about that responsibility? That's when I started to say, all right, I don't have to hold this by myself. I don't have to bear all the weight by myself. I'm weak in this area. I'm relinquishing my rights. I'm relinquishing the property of this fear, and I'm going to give it to God. Now, that's not going to be done in one prayer. That's not going to be done in one season. Sometimes it takes years, because to unlearn a previous habit that you have, we've talked about that in books, right? Atomic Habits. What does it take? And it's those small increment steps that we must take, right? And so it's reading a verse. You don't know what it means. You don't know the concordance, Greek terminology, and the Hebrew and all that. You don't know nothing. But it's saying, I'm going to try to find you, and I believe you enough to find me back exactly where I am, broken, abused, uncertain, fearful, and I choose to still find you even in all of that, because something in that text, if it to be true, right, tells me you're gonna find me there. You're going to find me right there in the middle of my storm, in the middle of my this. And I had to really compute with music. Music is a big thing for me and my family. So I found songs that made me feel liberated. I found things that really helped me find my identity. This is who I am. And I was still able to find it in the book. Some way, somehow.
Yes.
So yeah, I mean, I think, when we talk about faith as the foundation, I truly encourage someone out there that if you're struggling, you're on the fence, you're lukewarm about things, it's not going to turn overnight unless that is your message, unless that is your story. It won't happen overnight typically, right? But, and I'm not saying it will never, because anything is possible, right? But that wasn't the way for me, and I found myself just really honing in on finding my identity in Christ. And then that white knuckling thing, the things we try to hold so tightly on that your knuckles turn white, that was no longer a problem for me anymore. And so that's kind of helped all of the other attributes of everything of what Christ is and what he wants for our life.
And there are people who say, well, I'm mad at
I'm mad at God.
I'm mad at God.
Come on.
I don't have any faith that things will get better, because when I was in a situation, it didn't happen the way I wanted it to happen.
Yeah, that's when they need to stop questioning their worth during their transition.
And
recognizing that
sometimes
to trust God and more than you trust the circumstances.
that's good. And one of the verses that I've always stood strong on, and has allowed me to transition in areas when I was scared or fearful of going to that, making that next step,
Right.
was Proverbs 3:5-7. Trust in the Lord with all thy heart. Lean not to your own understanding, but in all your ways acknowledge him, and he will direct your path. Realizing that when we trust in with everything that we have, not some things, he's going to do what is best for us, that he knows, because remember, he can see the future.
Right.
He already knows what that is going on. We don't.
Right.
And so sometimes when we're mad at God or we're mad because things didn't turn out exactly the way we wanted them to turn out, it's because we can't foresee what he sees.
Yeah.
And so um one last one last thing that I use, I've always, I mean, I even had this on a keychain, and I have actually instilled this so much in my children from the time that they were younger to even to now. I still reference it, and that is the serenity prayer. And that, God grant me the serenity to accept the things that I cannot change, to change the things that I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. That has helped me so much that I sometimes have to remember there are things I can't change, but there are other things that I can change.
Right.
But recognizing the difference between the two and faith as my foundation, I know that I can change that when I'm fearful.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I cannot change the circumstances
Outcomes, right?
around it, but I can stand firm on my faith.
Yes.
Mm-hmm.
And recognizing that when you stand firm on your faith, regardless of what the circumstances are around you, what your faith is, what you manifest in your mind will come to pass.
Yep.
Think about that.
Yes. Yes.
I want to take a moment, just a moment, to say, uh, if this conversation is helping you, please like, subscribe to this podcast, and invite someone else that to this podcast that you know will be that this will benefit. And we are going to take a short break
Mm-hmm.
and come back. And when we come back, we're going to have a special guest. So you don't want to miss the special guest, because they too have a lot of knowledge and insight and have overcome many obstacles guided by faith as foundation that has helped them flourish. Hi, and welcome back to Empowered Voices. Thank you all for joining us. As we promised, we have a special guest with us in the studio today. Today we have in the studio with us Desmond Garcia, who is definitely known for his words of wisdom. If you have joined us previously on Empowered Voices, and as we've been talking about gentleness as power, if you joined us in the other episodes, and also faith as foundation and flourishing, Desmond comes with a plethora of experience, and he definitely has some expertise on both of those subjects. So we would like to hear what he has to tell us and say today about gentleness as power, and also flourishing with a faith foundation. As you have been in the corporate world and most recently have gone into an expedition of an entrepreneurial ship and owning your own company at this point in time. So we would definitely like to know what that is like when you have to use gentleness as power, as well as having a faith of foundation while still navigating and flourishing in today's world and this dynamic?
Well, first, thanks for having me. I am excited to be here amongst you all and to have this conversation. I think, it's important that this conversation is being had, especially in the world that we're living in right now, where some people just don't know how to navigate, life or, how to deal with certain things and, or don't have a strong foundation in anything. And I think, I'll start there of why having a strong foundation in faith is so important and why that actually bleeds over to uh, being gentle and having that as a leadership capacity. I think having faith as a foundation is so vital because it's the North Star. It points you to where you need to be. It aligns you to where you want to be as well. And if you've identified the specific items of what are your core beliefs, what are your core values, that always gives you a point to start from. And without anything to start from, you don't have anything to stand on. I've always heard that a man that, stands for, nothing will fall for anything. And so if you're not standing for something, if you don't know what your values are, if you don't know necessarily what specifically, is your guide to life, then it's very difficult to move forward. And when life hits you, it's very difficult to get back up if you don't have that strong foundation of faith. And, faith can be whatever it is that you want it, whether it's religion, whether it's, the Bible, anything in that sense. And the faith that I'm talking about is having a relationship with God, with Jesus, and understanding specifically what that means for you, for the people that are around you, and why it's important to have guidance. I think a lot of people look at religion and look at faith or the Bible and all these different things as, it's just it's you want to push people into religion or anything of that nature, but it's not that. It's when you read the book, when you understand that it is, truly the guide, right? There's so many books in leadership, so many, people, thought leaders that have gone through life and that have taken things from the Bible, that have taken things as their foundation and have written secular books about it so that people don't necessarily feel that they're being pushed into a religion or to a faith or anything of that nature. And so, I always like to look at it like that, as just like understanding that it's about the relationship. I'm not looking to live my life guided by rules or a box or anything that I need to fit into. I am focused on, what makes sense, right?
Right.
What truly makes sense is, treating someone how I want to be treated. Does that make sense? Is it loving my neighbor? Does that make sense? Like, is that human, right? And that's what the book does for me, is it gives me this humanistic uh thought process and outlook of what life should be. And that bleeds right into the first thing that you talked about, being gentle, because if you don't have that foundation in faith, it's very difficult to live a gentle life, because you look at others as they're trying to attack you, or they're trying to use you in a way, instead of seeing the good in them and not judging them, because ultimately, as we know from the Bible, the only person who can judge and should judge is God. And when you realize that you only have an option to be gentle. You only have an option to unconditionally care for people as a human being and not get overly weighted down by everything that's happening around you.
Right.
So I know that's a long answer.
Yeah, no, there's a lot of pieces of what you said that makes sense. One of the things that stood out to me the most is when you were talking about, I don't want to box myself. I think it's so important for us to really understand in this moment, in this lifetime, in this space that we're in the Bible, God is not a one size fits all. Right? He's omnipresent. He's omnipotent. He is all things all the time, everywhere. And he's so fluid. And so that description just breaks down the fluidity of who we have to keep ourselves as. We got to humble ourselves. We got to humble ourselves down to nothing almost to really experience who he is in full, right? And so when you think about other people, oh, this makes sense. And something you said really clicked to me, and I wrote it down. I said, God doesn't make mistakes.
Right.
Because he is the creator, right? So we were created. He is the creator, and him being the creator, that means he created the science that you believe in. He created the stars that you believe in, and he created everything. To say that we have to look at this with one eye, right? Um, is barbaric, right? And it diminishes and dilutes the power of God because he is so almighty and all knowing and all purposeful that even the person you're disagreeing with has a purpose. You got to remember that. And that's his precious purpose. But he don't make mistakes. He didn't just put them there for no reason. And so it's our job to say, it's not just about what makes me feel comfortable, is why is this happening to me, right? And put reason to rhyme as opposed to being defensive, as opposed to, oh, my experiences taught me this, or as opposed to, I'm going to shut my eyes because I know if I say, you start to I want to say this right because you guys want to be trying to use these words. Anyway, you try to like make everything so meticulous and make it fit and all these things. Yes, it is about understanding because that's where your confidence comes from, right? But it's also about releasing and not having all of the answers all of the time because I cannot compete with God. Right? He is God for a reason.
Yeah.
So I think releasing that competition almost will point people in the direction that they want to go.
Yeah, I like to definitely chime in this conversation. And one of the things that you said that stood out to me over everything else was seeing the good in people, regardless of what it looks like. So even if someone comes to you with an attitude and says something to you with an attitude, understanding the good of the intention
Right.
of what they are saying, take it in a, you know, years ago I used to say constructive criticism, but now the, politically correct terminology is, I believe it's feedback, right? But recognizing that whatever someone says to you and it may very well be meant in a negative manner, but if you are seeing that in a positive manner, regardless of the energy that that comes with it, your faith is always going to flourish. That foundation that you have is always going to flourish. And hopefully with you being consistent, and if you have the interaction with that person time and time again, then your faith and that consistency will then be able to reflect on them.
Yeah.
Not only did you say that, but one of the other things that you said is treating your neighbor, treating others the way you want to be treated. That was very, very profound to me in the fact of the matter. Let's just be honest and real. Right now, in this day and age, I'm in what we call a sandwich state. They call it a sandwich
Generation.
a sandwich generation, where I'm raising children, or I'm raising another child and taking care of a parent. And in that sandwich generation, you know, you become somewhat, I can say, speaking in my own, in my own experience, you become somewhat as a robot in a sense, because you're doing and doing and doing, but you're not processing.
Well, it's actually interesting that you said that, because the one thing that I was thinking about as Vicky was, elaborating on what I said and what you were saying too, is, going back to the point that A, we're not perfect.
Mm-hmm.
B, if we're not perfect, then who are we to hold people to such a high standard?
Mm.
And if we understand that, and that we do make mistakes, then we can't get so upset or frustrated, or whatever the emotion is that you want to tie into that feeling after something has happened. And that's where the foundation of faith, again, tying in what you're talking about, even being a sandwich, as an entrepreneur, as a business owner, there are so many times that, if you own a business, you do get in this repetitive state that you just get so systematically focused that you forget to slow down, to have, or to not to have, but to focus on the relationships that matter, to focus on the people that matter, to reach out, to to focus on, again, what was really important. And one of the things that I said was having your core values and understanding what that is. It's faith, family, right? Like what's really important to me, it's my faith, it's my family, it's my relationships, right? All of those things. And then if I go down, it's business, it's all these other things. But sometimes what happens is that because we're so human, business becomes a priority. Yeah, this becomes a priority. That all of these things start to stack up on top of your faith, your family, your friends, all of those things that are really at the core of who you are. And then you get off track. You lose step. You take a misstep. But that's exactly why it's important to know and understand what is your foundation. Because you can't get upset and because you get derailed. You just gotta what I like to say is you gotta rebound faster. You gotta rebound faster when you do get derailed. You have to notice and recognize those triggers in your life that will start to, like, it's before it even occurs, before you start to feel or realize that you're getting too systematic or too robotic with people, or you are getting too quick with people, or you're not giving people enough grace, and you're not being gentle enough with people. Because what happens, especially in this world, like I think about this all of the time, there are over 100 billion people that have walked this earth. Right now there's 9-10 billion, whatever the number is. So to to think that your one instance, your one frustration, your one feeling of whatever it might be that you're going through in life is so ginormous that it outweighs the 9 billion people on Earth, the Earth itself, the solar system, the universe, the Milky Way, all of these things. To think that you are so important not to treat someone like a human, being gentle. Because what I believe is that we do get to that point sometimes, but don't realize how small we are in the piece of the puzzle. And that being gentle, that being a good person, understanding what your foundation is what makes everything continue to move forward, is what makes people realize, like, they can go one more day. They, because you don't know what people are going through. You have no idea what level of stress or life you know, what situation they might have had with a significant other or a friend or family member. And the moment that we take our frustration or whatever out on them might cause them to either A, look at us in a way that really isn't who we are, or make a decision that might impact them, but then ultimately is a triggering point that impacts their entire lifeline.
Yeah. Yeah.
Sometimes you do things to people and family members that you don't even see. I mean, close friends, and they see it, but you don't see it. It's because you're not looking, your eyes are not completely open. And what you see is sometimes what they see is differently.
Yeah.
You know, people got to understand when you hurt people, hurt people.
Yeah.
And when you hurt people, you're not realizing that you're hurting them, but they're hurting inside. And when they shut down, then you wonder why they're shutting down. Wonder why that gentleness is now the power that they're using to cover up and put the brick up, the wall up, because of the situation at hand.
Yeah.
The things that you've done to them or the things that you said to them in harshness, and you don't realize that it's harsh.
Yeah.
You know, you got to learn how to regulate instead of explode. Just being honest.
Yeah.
And how do you start to do that? You know, for those of you who are listening here today, please take a moment to just subscribe to this podcast, like, and also invite someone here. And recognize that, you know, how do we start to change the same patterns that we have noticed in our life, that when we get to a certain level we start to unravel. And the way that I see that in my mind right now is like a domino effect. When you see that all of the dominoes are standing up tall and they create this beautiful picture, and then you get to that last step where of the unknown, where you've never been before. So then you start walking backwards, and that one domino falls, and then it creates the other dominoes to start to fall. How do we prevent that from happening? What is it that we have to do? Before you start to answer, I want to say the reason that I can see that so clearly in my mind is because I've had it to happen. And when I recognized when it started to happen, as Desmond was just talking about, the triggers that you see, and you start to see those patterns, what I learned to do was, one, go back to the basics. So you are go back to the basics of your foundation, to recognize, okay, this is the foundation. Where did I step out of my alignment in my foundation? Because if you are going back to the basics and you have taken a step forward each time, there, that means that there was a step missed in your basics.
Yeah.
And secondly, we all have to do this. We all have to understand that the foundation, regardless of what, was our childhood, was our upbringing. So recognizing where our traumas and the triggers came from first, so that we are able to truly dig them up from the roots.
Yeah. There's something I just want to, you think the domino picture makes sense to me in my mind. The way that I look at it, very similar to that, is not really a domino, but like a chain link, right? Like, you know, as kids, we for the holidays, like we put a link together. And I said something earlier about rebounding faster.
Mm-hmm.
And I want to make sure that everyone understands what that means. It's not that you just fall down, you get back up, and you take off running again.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things that I learned over the years was, it always confused me in life was like, wait on the Lord. I'm like, and what that verse was of like, wait on the Lord, and wait on the Lord, and wait, and it wasn't necessarily that you were sitting there doing nothing, but you were still doing the things that you needed to do. And so what I've learned in rebounding faster is, yes, I'm going to get back up, but that doesn't mean that I just take off and run. I need to your point, address the issues, to put the links back together,
Mm-hmm.
because ultimately I can't just take that moment that I'm at and just start moving forward. I've got to repair the links that I've broken before. As I'm doing this, as you're going back, as you're realizing the missteps, that's where you're rebounding faster, is because you're learning it. You're realizing, okay, I should have done this a different way, or I could have, here's the trigger and the link that was 2 or 3 months ago. And now as you rebuild back up and you're checking the links as you go back up, you're in the process of redeveloping the link, but it's stronger. It's thicker. It's not a thin link anymore. It's a thicker link that right now you've got a little bit further to go, and you now, because you've gone back, right? Like you just didn't sit there and try to figure out what was going on. You rebounded and opened that. You went back, you looked at what happened, you looked at the links that might have been broken, you identify the triggers, you identify the circumstances or situations, and then you start to rebuild. That is the rebounding faster. How long does it take you to recognize those issues and then get back to where you fell? Because to your point of how do you then, once you've done that, and I'm not here yet, but this is one thing that I'm realizing, is how do you get there to that point where you don't knock all the dominoes down, where you don't break the links, is you slow down. You slow down to focus on the relationships. You slow down to focus on the people that matter, your foundation, being gentle. You slow down to make sure that as you are being elevated in life, the links that you are putting on there, you don't become lackadaisical and just use regular Elmer's glue. You use Gorilla Glue. You thicken the paper. You have all of those things, because sometimes you can get so fast, you can start picking up speed even after you rebounded, after you've gone through that circumstance or situation, that you start going back to the regular paper that you used before. You start going back to the smaller links. You start going back to, just spit on it. It will go, it will stay together.
So my grandma did
Right.
like that too.
And so that then can hurt you. Right. So I just thought that might help someone.
And I did want to make a comment. So many things that are like coming to my mind as you guys are talking, and the biggest thing, yes, I agree completely. And the beautiful thing about having that, you know, going back and making things stronger. One of the things I noticed in having faith and understanding faith the way that I did and learning it later, I feel like, because it wasn't, I was a child, I wasn't brought up in it the way that I am now, right? But one of the things, it gets easier to have faith and not so, it gets easier to rely, I should say, on faith because now you realize that this is not all you, right? Because to your point, even though you are making things stronger, making the paper thicker, and all those things. Um, you said rebound. I wrote it down. You said rebound faster, recognize and make moves because you say this all the time too. Faith without works is dead. That's actually in the Bible. Faith without works is dead. And so for us to just act like, oh, I'm just gonna not do anything and and I'm just going to wait for God to meet me where I am. And it's just like, no, he's waiting for you to recognize where you are and have the discernment that he's already given you to go back and fix those things. And guess what? It's going to be with different tools. It's going to be with different supplies. It's going to be with something you have never been exposed to. Why? Because the whole point of the humanistic experience, as we've been talking about, tying all of this together, is evolving.
Yeah.
That's it. We're not doing the same things today as we was back in 1800s. It's just unheard of. Every phase of human life has some type of evolvement, and how interesting is it that we want to crawl back into that space that we felt so comfortable because grandma did it the same way or mom was making the cookies the same way, but I found a new ingredient. I just elevated what I've already been taught, and now guess what? My children don't have to deal with the diabetes because I replaced the sugar with monk fruit now. You know, it's small things like that, you know.
Right.
And so we just elevate, we grow, and just to recognize that that's all part of the plan anyway makes faith become so much easier to rely on because it didn't fail then
Given,
and it's not going to fail now.
yeah, yeah. Giving everybody 30 seconds, just coming down from Twanda, giving everybody 30 seconds. We are coming to a close on this podcast today, but giving everyone 30 seconds to just speak to someone who is listening. What would you say in 30 seconds about this conversation?
Learn to be gentle with people. Learn to your tone with people. Slow breathing. Pause before you say something. Use clear boundaries. Be intentional about your words, but don't be harsh with them.
Don't be too hard on yourself. Realize that you're not perfect. Start with being gentle with you so that way that you can be gentle with others and identify what your core values are, what's important to you as a person, so that when you do fall down, when you do need to rebound, you can go back to those.
Calamity is shallow, and kindness, love, and forgiveness is deep. That's what I leave people with because your circumstances are surface level, but the way you show up for people with kindness, love, respect, but also forgiveness, even for yourself, is going to take you into the depths of where you need to be.
Awesome. Until next time, we love you and thank you for joining us on Empowered Voices.
I'm standing strong. I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it through. 'Cause my house is built